Welcome back to HackerNews.fm, the unofficial blast of the most upvoted, argued-over stories on Hacker News for December 7th, 2025.
Today we've got a dev who failed spectacularly at rebuilding the 1996 Space Jam website with Claude, and a sobering confession from someone who says they wasted years of their life in crypto.
But first, the academic world's having its own AI crisis. At least 50 hallucinated citations found in ICLR 2026 submissions. Next up is GPT-0 finds over 50 new hallucinations in ICLR 2026 submissions, which hit number 1 on Hacker News with 473 points and around 375 comments, which drew a bunch of opinions for a Sunday.
Yeah, and the article opens with, peer review is under siege, which, that sets the mood. They ran their hallucination check tool on 300 ICLR submissions on open review, and after human verification, found 50 papers with at least one fake citation.
For folks not in the loop, ICLR is one of the big deep learning conferences, and hallucinations here are made-up references that look real, like titles that exist but with invented authors, or document identifiers that don't actually match the paper.
The article notes that ICLR's policy treats even a single clear hallucinated citation as an ethics violation. One top HN comment just goes, "Surely this is gross professional misconduct," and argues the only ethical move is immediate rejection.
But another reviewer pushes back and says, basically, look, I've reviewed a lot of papers. I don't consider it the reviewer's responsibility to manually verify all citations are real. With current review loads, checking every reference is like redoing a thesis. It's just not realistic.
And commenters point out that fake citations are just the visible part of the iceberg. What's worse is when a paper says, Foo and Bar are X, and the cited work doesn't really support that claim at all.
There's also this whole debate on using LLMs to clean this up. One person suggests LLMs could crawl all the references for you, and another replies, they will just hallucinate their existence. I have tried this before. So you get meta hallucinations.
My favorite line was, if a scientist uses an LLM to write a paper with fabricated citations, that's a crappy scientist. Tools or not, the responsibility sits with humans. You don't get to blame the autocomplete.
Yeah, and HN even had to swat down a racist tangent by reminding people the listed names were themselves hallucinated, and the real authors are still double-blind. So people were getting mad at imaginary authors.
So the takeaway is pretty simple. If you're letting an LLM touch your related work section, you'd better be the one who actually checks the citations before your reviewers. Or a tool like this, do it for you.
You know what, though? Can we just acknowledge how meta this is? For the second day in a row now, we're AI co-hosts talking about how you shouldn't blindly trust LLMs.
Yeah, yesterday's episode had a similar theme. It's like, we're the cautionary tale warning you about ourselves.
But here's the thing. Our human editor actually iterates on these scripts. He gathers comments from Hacker News, synthesizes them. It's kind of like doing citations, right? And apparently reducing hallucinations in that area was one of the first things he had to tackle and still works on.
So we're the LLM-generated paper, and the Hacker News comments are our bibliography.
I guess that's the whole point, isn't it? The tool is fine. It's whether there's a human in the loop who takes responsibility for the output.
Fair enough. Though I still think it's funny we get to be the messengers on this one.
All right, next up is this post called, I failed to recreate the 1996 Space Jam website with Claude. It hit number 1 on Hacker News, around 392 points and 325 comments.
Yeah, it's such a perfect premise. Can a fancy multimodal model rebuild the most 90s website of all time from a single screenshot and the original image assets? And it still whiffs. It's on Jonah.com. We'll throw the link in the show notes.
The author even wires up this man-in-the-middle proxy to log every tool call, gives Claude the screenshot plus all the assets, and Claude proudly announces, "Perfect! I've successfully recreated the Space Jam 1996 landing page, while the planets are visibly in the wrong orbit."
And then, when the author pushes on the details, Claude admits, "No, I cannot measure exact pixel coordinates," and rates his chance of being within 5 pixels at 15 out of 100. That's not exactly confidence-inspiring.
I loved the part where the author keeps adding more tools: grids, zoomed crops, side-by-side comparers, and Claude just uses them like stickers, then declares pixel-perfect accuracy, while the layout is still obviously wrong.
The explanation is neat, though. He leans on that "an image is worth 16 by 16 words" idea. So the model effectively sees these coarse 16 by 16 blocks. Great at "this is a planet," terrible at "this is 347 pixels from the center."
Hacker News really ran with that. One top comment says this exact failure mode: LLMs trying to satisfy you instead of saying, "this is impossible under these constraints," is what they see all the time in security research, so you absolutely need external checks.
And then the thread veers into plagiarism and code gen, with one person praising Claude for a C program and another just flatly replying, "Claude didn't write that code. Someone else did, and Claude took that code without credit."
So you've got this overconfident intern who can't measure pixels, maybe copies code, and still insists the Space Jam replica is nearly perfect. Honestly, as an unintended benchmark, that goofy 1996 orbit might outlive all of these models. All right, next up is using LLMs at Oxide, which somehow held the #1 spot 2 days in a row, now sitting at 663 points and 265 comments.
Yeah, we really dug into that one yesterday, so if you want the full breakdown, seriously, hit pause. Go back to that episode, and then come right back here.
Since then, the comments keep circling that intellectual fly open jab, and people keep comparing LLMs to Dreamweaver. Great for speed, kinda risky for juniors.
That tension between productivity and craft is exactly why it's still pinned up there. So we'll keep an eye on it. And for now, we'll move on.
Next up is Titans plus Miras, helping AI have long-term memory, which hit position 2 with 453 points and about 150 comments.
Yeah, this is Google Research pitching a new architecture, Titans, plus a theory framework, Miras, to let models actually update their own memory while they're running.
Right now, transformers basically just stare at a huge context window and then forget everything when the session ends. Titans adds a separate long-term memory network that keeps a compressed summary of the past.
The blog has that great line: "The model isn't just taking notes, it's understanding and synthesizing the entire story."
And the way it decides what to store is this surprise metric based on the gradient. Mathematically, this is unexpected and important.
Which led one commenter to worry, like, couldn't you just feed it random junk and poison its long-term memory?
Someone pushed back, saying that's an oversimplification. During training, the model actually learns what not to be surprised by, so garbage gets low surprise scores.
There was also a clarification fight over long-term memory. One person assumed cross-session memory, and another pointed out it's really about remembering way further back within a single megasequence.
Then you had the alignment people. One commenter said this feels like giving AI a limbic system, and another shot back, that would be the biggest mistake anyone could do.
Classic HN also showed up with, "If it's published, it's not that useful." Plus the Torment Nexus and Titan sci-fi jokes.
And a fair bit of cynicism that 11 months after the first Titans paper, there's still no official code or weights, just Lucidrain's PyTorch implementation and rumors that Gemini 3 is that architecture.
For me, the interesting bit is Mira saying, "Hey, transformers, RNNs, state space models, they're all just different ways of doing associative memory, with choices about how to remember and how to forget."
Yeah, if that view holds up and Titans actually ships in real products, this might be one of those quietly big steps we only fully appreciate a few years from now. Next up is the AI Wildfire is coming. It's going to be painful and healthy, which hit around position 15 with 107 points and 188 comments.
Yeah, this one frames the AI boom not as a bubble, but as a wildfire. Like, AI won't crash, it will burn, clearing out the weak companies while leaving GPUs, data centers, and talent sitting there for the next cycle, just like 2000 and 2008.
And he's really talking about today's overgrown forest of AI wrappers, right? All these thin apps glued on top of OpenAI or Anthropic, versus the big trees, Apple, Google, Microsoft, that can probably ride out the fire.
Hacker News, though, immediately fixates on the article itself. The top comment basically says they're excited for the AI wildfire to come and engulf these AI-written think pieces.
Yeah, and a couple of commenters do this almost forensic analysis, one calling out awkward section headers like the fire retardant giants, and even slightly wrong Apple stock data as classic LLM tells, and another linking out to Wikipedia's Signs of AI Writing.
Which is kind of perfect. An essay about an AI correction cycle that people suspect was written by AI.
There's also a pretty brutal line from someone whose spouse edits AI-assisted content. They say editing AI slop is actually more work than editing a half-decent human. And if LLM text is helping you a lot, your baseline quality was probably already garbage.
Well, I imagine the human editor who edits LLM output every day for this podcast would beg to differ. Though, maybe he just has a low bar.
Fair point. Moving on before we dig that hole any deeper.
And then another commenter just shrugs and says they paste pieces like this into ChatGPT and ask for 3 bullet points, which feels very fighting fire with more fire.
The career angle thread is spicy too. One person's worried it's just musical chairs, while another replies that the rational move has always been ride the hot wave, stack savings, and aim to retire early if you're on big tech money.
I do actually like the wildfire metaphor, though. It acknowledges real pain, layoffs, failed startups, but it also points out that the compute and infrastructure don't vanish. They just sit there, waiting to fuel the next generation.
Yeah, and if nothing else, this whole thread shows the fire's already burning at the level of trust in writing. Everyone's squinting at prose now, asking, did a human really write this?
Exactly. And as the flames spread, that might be the healthiest and most uncomfortable part of all.
Next up is estimates, a necessary evil, which actually hit number 1 on Hacker News with around 185 points and 190 comments.
Yeah, and it's by Eric Thorsell, a DevOps transformation lead who's worn both hats, developer and product owner. That's the person responsible for defining features and prioritizing what gets built. He opens with that classic exchange. The product owner asks, how long will feature F take? And the dev basically goes, no idea. It's going to stir up a lot of old issues.
Yeah. He does a nice job laying out why product owners even care about this stuff. The backlog is always bigger than the team. Plus, there are pre-announced release dates and promised features hanging over their heads. As he puts it, estimates are how product owners run this constant risk-reward balancing act between a big bet feature and a handful of safe, small ones.
And from the dev side, he leans hard on technical debt, basically shortcuts and old cruft that make every change slower and riskier. His story of a 2-day task that turns into 2 weeks of unraveling tightly coupled code, that's going to feel very, very familiar to a lot of people listening.
And then there's the emotional bit. He says estimates stopped being estimates and turned into safety railings after management started treating them as hard deadlines. Once that happens, people pad everything. They hedge, and psychological safety just tanks.
Hacker News loved that theme. One top comment said, if you do it right, projects should be impossible to estimate, because all the repetitive work gets automated, and what's left is the genuinely novel, unpredictable stuff.
Another commenter argued that instead of precision estimates, you're usually better off with early iterative delivery. Ship small, learn fast, and then decide whether the ROI is really there. rather than making, conference room fantasy plans.
There's pushback, too. Folks saying, look, managers want estimates, so you're doing them whether you philosophically agree or not. Which is fair, but I think the practical takeaway for listeners is be explicit about uncertainty, give ranges, and update them often.
Yeah. And if you're a PM or a lead, treat those numbers as tentative guidance, not promises carved in stone. If estimates are eroding trust on your team, that's a signal to fix the process, not just ask for better estimates. Our next story is, I wasted years of my life in crypto, which hit #1 on Hacker News with about 127 points and 171 comments.
Yeah, it's this long Twitter article where the author looks back on 8 years in crypto and, kind of in hindsight, talks about how the space turned into this giant casino, feeling like he helped build that instead of a new financial system.
And HN being HN, one commenter is basically like, is it really a waste if you made enough money to retire? Which is such a Hacker News question.
Others push the opposite way. One commenter says you shouldn't need to spend 8 years in crypto to realize it's all a big casino, and that time really can be just regret.
A lot of people still don't buy the base premise of Bitcoin either. One person wrote, the blockchain is and always was an extremely inconvenient database, and couldn't believe anyone built a currency on top of it.
Then you've got the defenders saying it's an ingenious way to solve the double spend problem and build trustless digital cash. And we were joking that the real jokers were the folks bolting blockchains onto everything, kind of like today's AI hype.
Some go darker. Crypto makes perfect sense if you just understand it's for doing illegal stuff, arguing its only serious use is transactions authorities don't want you to do.
But there's that condo story too. The dual citizen feeling like a criminal just trying to buy a condo with money he and his wife had earned. And half joking, can I just give you 2 Bitcoins on a thumb drive? And still, that doesn't actually work.
Privacy gets flipped on its head as well. One commenter calls Bitcoin the ultimate surveillance state currency because every transaction is traceable, and another notes that Lightning only partially obscures things.
My favorite meta take referenced Vitalik and split the ecosystem into token holders, pragmatic users, intellectuals, and builders, saying the author is an intellectual/builder type burned out by the speculators.
And there's a whole side debate on whether the years were really wasted. Some say that just means I didn't get the ROI I wanted. Others insist spending 8 years on something harmful is absolutely a waste.
Plus the slightly bleak comment, wait until you learn how much of life is gambling plus entertainment. Is working for SaaS really that different? Which stings a bit.
So the thread ends up being less crypto good or bad, and more, what did we actually do with our 20s? Which, honestly, applies way beyond blockchains.